Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Good morning. Welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. And today we have a very special guest, Isabela Villas Boas. Good morning. How are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Brad. I'm very glad to be here. It's a great pleasure. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
I'm so excited to have you today. We tried earlier and had some technical difficulties, so hopefully it'll be a good day for us. So
Yeah.
just share a little bit with our listeners about, so you're in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Is that right? Is that where
Yes.
you're from originally?
No, I'm originally from Brasília, the capital of
Okay.
Brazil. I was born and raised there, and I lived there except for two periods in my life. And when I lived in the U.S., I lived in Brasília until a year and a half when I moved to São Paulo to work for the company, the educational institution I work for now.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So just tell us a little bit about your journey and where you are now in your educational journey.
All right. So I started actually. I what we call an incidental teacher because I started. That wasn't my that wasn't what I got my major in. I got a major in journalism, and ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a journalist. But when I was going to a university, I started teaching just to as a gig, these kinds of things that we do. I started teaching English because I was proficient in English, and the school where I had learned English. I was also taking their teacher training course just for the sake of improving, just being in touch with the language, etc. And they invited me to start teaching. At that time, there weren't many qualified teachers, so it was possible to start teaching without qualifications, which is harder today. So I started teaching at the age of 19 and fell in love with the profession. So I gave up my career as a journalist. I got a degree, but then I decided not to um, start a career in journalism and continue my career in teaching. And then I advanced by starting getting new positions in the institution where I was working. So I became a course supervisor, and at the same time, I started specializing. Uh, Focusing on really specializing in English language teaching. And then I decided to get a master's degree in the US. So I spent a year and a half in Arizona, and I got a master's in teaching English as a second language from Arizona State University. Went back to Brazil and, advanced in my career until I became the academic director of the institution where I was working. It's a binational center in Brasilia, a prominent binational center known worldwide, a nonprofit institution called Casa Thomas Jefferson. So I became their academic director. I had this position for 14 years. I also got a PhD in education because I thought that applied linguistic wasn't going to give me the breadth that I needed in my career. I needed something more. I needed to expand my horizons and get into education in general, and not focus only on the teaching of English and issues related to teaching of English. So I was very happy about this choice I made, and then after 34 years working for Casa Thomas Jefferson as a teacher, course supervisor, academic assistant, lots of different positions, and finally reaching the C-level position of academic director, I decided to quit my job and join a consultancy company, an educational consultancy company focused on teacher development and materials development. So it's a company called Troika, and I spent 2 years as a partner, as a managing partner at Troika, and was engaged in lots of projects with lots of different educational companies in Brazil, related to teacher development, educational leadership, and also materials development for teaching English. Um, from small projects to big projects like developing whole collections for schools and for educational enterprises. And then I was invited by Cultura Inglesa to be their academic director, and that's why I'm here in São Paulo. Cultura Inglesa is one of the oldest language teaching institutions in Brazil. It turned 90 last July, so it's been around for 90 years. It's a huge company with schools in different states in Brazil. We have over 500 teachers, and we also have franchises with a good number of teachers as well. And so it's a very big endeavor, and it's a lot of responsibility. And I'm heading now the a new direction in the company, which is developing our own materials rather than adopting materials from publishers. So this is the new yeah. And so now, I'm putting together my experience as an educational leader and as a materials writer and a project manager in a way, right? And developing this new endeavor for Cultura Inglesa.
Oh,
So,
wow.
try to summarize, a 38-year career.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's hard to do in a compressed time, but that's impressive.
Yeah,
I noticed you said you started with a journalism path to begin with. How do you think that kind of shaped you as a teacher and even more as a leader? Do you think that influenced you in any way or maybe gave you an advantage in some ways?
definitely. It definitely gave me an advantage because journalism is a course that gives you lots of background in sociology, economics, and you see a little philosophy. So you see a little bit of everything. You study a little bit of everything in journalism, and I really honed my writing skills as a journalist, as a student of journalism, and I used this in my studies and my publishing because my area of study, both in my master's course and in my PhD, was second language writing.
Mm.
So I put together, my love for writing and all the expertise I developed as a journalist major in writing, and put this, related this to the development of second language writing. So I worked on, that's what I focused my dissertation on, the process genre approach to teaching second language writing and how to implement it in Brazil, where this is not where the traditional, the product approach is still uh, out there. So how do you, get students who are used to a certain way of learning to write in their first language, how to engage in a new dynamics in learning to write in a second language, and so it contributed. My background in journalism contributed to that.
We know that communication is so important in leadership, and I do see how that would be an advantage, especially with your written communication too, but with your verbal as well as a leader. I think that's so important. As a leader and as a director in your role, what do you think are your greatest? Do you have a strength or certain strength or strengths that you feel like help you in that role?
Yes, I think I have strengths. I also have weaknesses. We all do, right? I feel that my greatest strength as a leader is being very clear about my vision and my directions and strategy. So being very clear about this and focusing on it. I think I've also been very successful in working together with my team to for buy-in and to make them feel comfortable, to disagree, and
Yeah.
to uh, put forth their opinions without fear. So I think I'm able of to create a light environment with my team, with with a lot of sense of humor, informal, we're putting people first, and first working on making people feel comfortable.
I like the first point that you made about the clear vision because it's hard to know if you're reaching your goals or not if you don't know what the goals are. I always think of like a sports team, they have goals every year to make the playoffs. It's not to be the champion yet, but it's, hopefully to make the playoffs. And then they have short term goals of so many wins or whatever, and then execution of things. So I think it's so important as a leader to articulate those things. But plus, like you said, also make sure that you have, I know some people don't like the word buy-in, but that's really what it is. You're getting them on board with your vision. And I think that's the
Yeah.
whole key to it, because if they're not going to do much to help you work towards that goal. And when you have them on board, then they are going to be much more effective as a team in attaining those goals.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's more like a shared vision, right? Building a shared vision. I guess that would be the best wording.
Right, absolutely, and that's the word that I use often. Right, is it really has to be a shared vision. Otherwise, it's people are going to go off on their own agenda, and who knows what happens. But if you all have that shared vision and goals, then it's much more achievable. When you look back, you think about your leadership and the journey to where you're at. Has there been like a teacher or teachers along the way that have influenced you?
Well, a person who influenced me immensely was the former director that at Casa Thomas Jefferson, whom I uh, um, uh, 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 s- uh, succeeded. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but so when she retired, she appointed me as the new director, and she was my mentor. I worked with her as her assistant for many years, and her name is Katie Cox, and she was the academic director before me, and she's really my mentor. She's the person with whom I learned the most, who gave me the feedback that helped me develop and helped me see my blind spots, identify them, and work on them in a very caring way, always in a very caring way. So I learned from her how to work with people, be demanding when we have to be demanding, be harsh when we have to be harsh in terms of what we have to say, but in a caring way, in a way that is authentic, that you show that you are genuinely interested in the development of that person.
And I like that you talked about it in a caring way because I'm really big on relationship is the foundation of everything, but relationship doesn't always mean everything's wonderful and great and warm and fuzzy. Like you said, sometimes you have to have those hard conversations or redirect people. But if you do it caringly, with the right attitude and in the right way. I think that's the key, because as leaders, you do have to do that sometimes. But I think it's in,
Mhm.
like you said, the way that you handle it and the way that you engage with them makes all the difference. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Right. And more recently, I've been, um, I always read a lot about educational leadership, and I sometimes give talks about this in courses. And recently, I've been focusing on the new, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but new trend, or what we know better today about giving feedback, and that giving positive feedback and reinforcing what people do well is the best way to go, rather than that old sandwich approach that everybody talks about that doesn't work. It gets people have figured it out, so they know that when you start saying, oh, you're doing this, but
But yeah,
so focusing, reinforcing what people are doing well, and making sure that they identify what they do well and how they can transfer that to a situation in which they can improve, and transfer what that they know about their successes to a situation in which they need to develop, rather than focus on what they're not doing well. So I've been trying to you know understand and read about it and practice it, right, with my team, not only with my team, but also as a researcher and lecture, whatever, of assessment, because I focus a lot on formative assessment, on assessment reform. I've been promoting an assessment reform in the institution, that doing away with tests and focusing on performance assessment, retakes, um, getting the best out of the students rather than the worst, eliminating anxiety, eliminating biases, and all that sort of thing. And it's quite challenging to do that in Brazil, because we still have a very traditional, exam oriented educational system, a meritocracy oriented educational system. And so I'm trying to work on this here in the institution.
yeah, and we're kind of the same in the U.S. We like to think we make advances, but it really kind of seems the same worldwide. And especially, and I like the point that you made, that we all know the sandwich um, example. And so, but I never thought about the point you just made, that when someone's sitting there, listen to someone give them feedback and they hear, oh, you did this, they're waiting on that but to come in. And it will be there because we're used to that being how that we give feedback. The interesting thing about the more praise, like you said, is the research says that it's about 5 positive to
Yes.
1 negative. And what's really interesting about that is I believe the research for that actually came from psychology, from actually the field of working with married couples and
Hmm.
showing how that, their level um, uh, com- of contentment, I guess, in the marriage or whatever. But what they found is that there was that almost magic number of about 5 compliments to each negative, that when spouses did that to each other, they had the best relationship, got the most out of the relationship. And that's one of the things that I parallel, going back to, no matter what your role is professionally, it's still it comes down to relationships. And so that's something that's really important to keep in mind, that if, even though it's professional versus personal relationship, we're still the same people with the same psyche, the same everything. So it obviously transitions well. And I think
Hmm.
when we get in that mindset, that it makes a big difference. Sometimes I'll get pushback from leaders that'll say something like, oh, well, if you just go around saying nice things all the time, it's kind of meaningless or whatever. And I'm like, but what that does, and the point you made, is it retrains you to look for those things instead of just, interacting and waiting on your time to give the sandwich and throw the bud in there. But if that's your mindset and you're thinking of five versus one, you're going to start interacting with them that way and talking to them that way, communicating to them that way. So it really is a mindset change, but it's one that I think makes a huge difference.
Yes, it makes a huge difference as a leader. And it's not about saying nice things, right? It's about recognizing and showing evidence of good work. So it's not just praising and using adjectives, but showing,
Right.
oh, this was effective. It's just like we do with students, right? You did this well because of this, and that. Be very clear about why this was well done, right? And as you said, we train our minds to look for good examples because traditionally, in especially those of us who are, from older generations, I guess you're probably around my generation, we were trained to always look for the wrong thing, always look for what was wrong in people. Our parents probably did that a lot to us. Mine not so much. I was very fortunate to grow up in a very healthy family, but most of the times, our teachers definitely did that. So it was always, the negative more often than the positive, and this idea of, oh, it's good for your character, right? um, and this transfers to the classroom because you see we work with people who work with I'm an academic director. I have a group of academic coordinators working with me who work directly with teachers, who work with students. So if we don't have this mindset, the teachers are not going to have this mindset with their students.
That's a great point. Yeah, they will often emulate what you're focusing on because that's what you're giving. That's what you're pouring into them. That's a great
Right.
point. And like you said, I think that was kind of our generation growing up, and it wasn't that it was necessarily a negative thing, but it was always like a mindset of, oh, always seek improvement, I guess, and that's how we kind of had it. Even now, when we talk about the sandwich thing, is the thing in the middle is just area of growth, or needs improvement. We know what that really means, but that's how we try to soften it up a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But
And I think we do need to help people identify their areas of growth, but maybe through asking questions. So, what do you think are your areas of growth? What would you like to develop? Oh, okay. So, and how can your experience in how can your strengths help you develop these areas that you want to grow in? What can you transfer from your successes that can help you? So it's like I think it's more encouraging, right? It's less a deficit view of
yeah,
of uh, of feedback and more a promising view. There's a book on assessment by Mahoney. It's called Assessing Emergent Bilinguals, and I really like this framework that she proposes, that we move away from a deficit view of assessment and what people can't do well to a promising view, what they can do well, and be more make this more evident.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's really, always share that really the goal of education is to develop people's strengths. We all have weaknesses, but we are deficit based in education and in life. We're always focused on the weaknesses and we need to improve them, and never really think about focusing on what we do well so we can be even better or be great. And also, that with
Mhm.
teachers, like you're talking about, I think for the most part, most teachers I've ever worked with are kind of self aware. They kind of know areas that they aren't that great in, or areas that they may need improvement. So, it's more of, like you said, what can you do, or, asking them questions instead of just letting that be the focus. Developing our strengths, maximizing them, that's a growth mindset, and that's going to help people be more successful.
Exactly, exactly. I have a lot of experience observing teachers in the classroom and doing giving feedback, but in this very careful way of having pre-observation meetings, deciding on what the goals are, etc., and having a post-observation meeting centered on the teacher. And for me, what I call the nirvana moment is when you sit down with the teacher and you ask them, okay, so how do you think your class went? What would you point out as the things you thought went really well? And what would you do differently the next time you teach this class? And for me, the nirvana moment is when the teacher is able to talk the whole time and you don't have to say anything because they've said it all. So if we are able to develop people to the point in which they can do this on their own, right? This self analysis, I think this is the goal for all kinds of assessments, right?
Yeah, and especially a formal one like that. And I think that's important, like you said, too, to because a lot of times, especially up here, especially if administrators are kind of pushed for time or something, they'll just go in, do an observation, and leave, and send them a copy of it. They may or may not meet with them, but I really think if you're doing a formal evaluation, even though I'm not a big fan of them, but if they have to be done, then I'm like you. I think it's important to have that pre-observation and kind of talk about what's going to happen, or expectations, or what you're looking for, and then to have that meet after and wrap up, like you said, and get their feedback. Otherwise, I'm not sure what's the point of the formal
Yeah.
evaluation.
I'm talking more about classroom observations for development and not for accountability purposes, you know?
Mm, okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so not to rate a teacher or to give a point system or a mark, but rather to help in the development. I understand your point of view, and I follow you, and I know what your opinions are about this, and I agree. But at the end of the day, in an institution where I am, where we have lots of young teachers like just like me, I started teaching at the age of 19. I didn't have that much training. Somebody had to help me develop, and somebody had to go into my classroom and see what I was doing and help me develop. So I learned, I think I became a good teacher from the teachers I observed as models and from the feedback I got, but feedback focused on my development and not focused on uh, ranking me among the teachers at the school or giving me a letter a grade or a number.
And that's why I
So
think teachers need mentors. Because when you've got a mentor come in, they're not the one that's evaluating you, like you said, for a grade or a number, or for, administrative purposes. And so I think that makes a big difference. It kind of eases the stress level. And it's someone, hopefully, that you can confide in, and be open and honest and get feedback from. So to me, I think a mentor is so important, and having those interactions, and like you said, letting teachers observe other teachers. There's always that one or two teachers, and everybody in the school knows who they are. That's like the
Mhm.
best of the best. And they're just, you can learn so much from them by just simply watching them do what they do.
Exactly. But I think we can do even better if we can. Okay, there are best of the best, but every teacher is good at least one thing.
Right.
So if we can map that and say, okay, so if this is the area, if this is what you want to improve in, go watch that teacher because that teacher is
Exactly.
great at giving instructions. Or that other teacher is wonderful in managing, the classroom in a positive way. And so, just like we should do with students, right? You talked about the 5-to-1 ratio. I was lucky to have taken that course that talks about this in Coursera a long time ago in 2012. Um, it's Daniel Goldman and
Right,
and other
Goldman. Yeah.
co-authors, right? Who developed that. I still have the videos. I use them in my trainings about the couples, etc. And we also encourage teachers to make sure they praise students often, and they praise all students. And for this, you need to have a system, right? So, get 5 names a day and make sure you praise something about those, pay special attention to those 5 students and make sure you praise them for something they did well. And then the next class, 5 other students, because teachers have big classes, and it's impossible for them to do that every day with all students. So make sure you're focusing on all of them, and you're focusing on what they're doing well, and you can recognize what they're doing well, and maybe even write to their parents saying what they're doing well, because we contact parents when there's a problem. Why don't we
Right,
contact
right.
parents to praise them, to tell what their kids are doing well?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's and one of the things that I love to share with teachers is and it's kind of I think most people know it now, but let that first conversation with the parent be a positive one. Even if it's just at the beginning of the year sending them a note or just checking in with them. But yeah, and I know that's more work, but it makes such a big difference in the long run when you take the time, like you said, to share the good news with them. Because the parents may not, my thing is, if you've got a child that doesn't like school, they probably have parents that didn't like school, and so they have that negative mindset towards it. And teachers can go a long ways towards changing that with that positive engagement with them, sharing with them, calling or sending emails or writing in their agenda or whatever that it is, and building kind of that relationship with them. Like I said, it's a little bit more work, but it really pays off big time over the course of a year.
Oh, yes. Building relationships is essential in education. Uh, Building relationships with your students. So it all starts with the
Right.
leader building relationships with the staff, with the teachers, among the teachers, and then the teachers with their students. There has to be, a leadership that encourages this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the leader really does, it's cliche, but they set the tone. You set the tone for the school, and the teachers will model what you do. And so it's just so important. Do you have like a nugget of wisdom or something to share, maybe with new administrators or people moving into a new role?
Um, I guess when you're moving into a new role, especially in a place that you're not very familiar with, I'm taking my example, right? That I joined an institution that where I, as an academic director, an institution that had not had an outside academic director ever. All the others had been, had grown inside the institution, so it was completely new. So I would say, listen a lot. Spend, the first month or 2 months listening, going, visiting classrooms, talking to students, but in the sense of, listening to students, listening to the teachers, listening to everybody, all the stakeholders, and asking lots of questions, not giving opinions, but asking questions, asking lots of questions, reading the room, reading the
Yeah.
atmosphere, identifying what the culture is, and then thinking about, how you fit into that culture, how you can make that school culture more positive, because it can always be more positive, and then slowly building the shared vision with everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true because a lot of times when a new leader comes in, they might have things they want to do or something they think, they need to implement, or maybe they are coming in with kind of a mandate from the higher ups or whatever. But those that take the time to listen and build those relationships, that really does make a big difference in whether they are able to achieve those things that they want to do. I mean, you can come in and try to force them, but you know, I don't know how
It's
it is
not.
there, but in the US, the turnover rate of principals and even superintendents is crazy. I mean, most of them only last about 2 or 3 years. And so if you're just going in to try and take charge and tell people what to do, you're probably not going to last very long anyway.
You're
So,
not. It starts with building relationships. As the old saying goes, culture will eat you for breakfast.
mm, yeah,
So, right?
yeah.
So there's a book called The First 90 Days. It's not focused on educational leadership particularly. I don't remember the name of the author, but it's a good book for people who are starting in a leadership
Okay.
position, what to do in the first 90 days.
Right,
And it's not to have this agenda, okay, so I'm here, I arrived here, this is what I want to do, this is my mandate, this is my plan. No, that's not going to work. The institutional culture will, everybody is going to nod. They're going to pretend they
yeah,
agree with you, but they are going to jeopardize your work if you don't have this relationship building first. That's
right,
what
right,
happens.
right. That's such a good point. I'm glad you shared that. That's definitely a nugget of wisdom for new leaders to understand, and hopefully we'll benefit from it. All
Mm-hmm.
right,
Right.
so our last thing is just one question. It's the hardest one though, but because this is called Lattes and Leaders. But what is your favorite hot beverage of choice?
Coffee.
Just
Coffee.
regular
Black.
coffee?
Black
Black?
coffee.
Okay.
No sugar, no milk, just black coffee. Brazilian coffee,
There
preferably,
you go. I was about
because
to say you
Brazilian.
kind of have an advantage. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I have an advantage because we are, I think today, the biggest coffee grower in the world. I don't know if we still are, but we used to be. I know Americans think when they think about coffee, they think about Colombia, but
Hmm.
Brazil is a big coffee grower. We have good gourmet coffee now here in Brazil, so I love coffee.
Um, so you've been to the States, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so you've drank coffee here. Is there a difference? Is there something with the package and shipping and storage that kind of takes the the
The
goodness
thing,
out of it from being there where it's grown?
well, no, the coffee in the US is good. There's lots of coffee from Brazil in coffee shops. I've seen a lot. But there's lots of good coffee from other places in the world too. Um, but out your uh, regular coffee, brew is considered by Brazilians very watery because we drink stronger coffee
Hmm.
than in the US. And we don't drink coffee in those big cups. We drink them because it's stronger, so it's smaller cups.
I
It's
gotcha.
stronger coffee. But I like the American style of coffee, so I make coffee like in the US, more watery, but nobody likes it. So when I have to make coffee for more people than me, I have to make it stronger. But
Uh,
when I make it for myself, it's lighter. I've always liked it. Okay, so I'm a fan of American coffee, and everybody says, "How can you? Coffee in the US is horrible." But they're not talking about cappuccinos or espressos. They're
I
talking
gotcha.
about, the regular coffee.
Right. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time today. You've got just such a great background and just a good perspective on leadership. So I'm glad you were able to share that, and hopefully listeners will be able to take a little bit of perspective. I love to have people from different parts of the world share, because I think we see that there are some differences, but there are some similarities, and that we're all in it together trying to,
Yes,
improve education, improve teaching, and help students be successful. And I think that's a common theme that we see that really unites us more than anything else.
exactly. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on your effort to bring voices from other parts of the world and to uh, open the conversation to people who are not necessarily noticed, in mainstream conversation. So that's very admirable.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.